Good afternoon, Sean here, Mountains Garage. It's Monday, and at 5:30 this morning I popped right out of bed. Before I had a chance to really consider the task that was ahead of me, I just ripped into it and I emptied all the transmissions out of the green storage box outside and dug the next victim, hopefully a turbo hydro 475. It was absolutely in the right rear corner of the box. The first one I wheeled in there 4 or 5 years ago. It needed a good reorganization, and I had it all done by 8 o'clock or so this morning, so not too bad. I've managed to get it on the bench. It's time to rip it apart. Getting them out of the box isn't bad. Every transmission I have in that box is on a furniture dolly, so I wheel them 2 at a time sideways up by the entrance door and have the forks on the tractor set about yay far apart, and I can maneuver right under them, pick up 2 at a time. The stuff I have stored I have shelves on either side. I have just enough room to turn the transmission sideways, and I'm telling you, a 2-wheel drive 4L80E with a yoke sticking out of it is the longest thing out there. Longer than the 475 anyway. So, and the 4L60Es and the 700R4, the 204Rs, the TH400, the Pawl glides, the Turbo 400s, and I reorganized quite a bit of it. I brought all the Turbo 400s I have inside, which is only about 4 cores that I've never ripped into, so I'm definitely low in inventory on Turbo 400s. But let's rip into this one and see what's inside. I'm digging deep for the 475. Way back in the corner. The first one I put in. Let's dig it up. Here it is in what I believe to be all its original glory, because this motorhome I also bought the engine out of a long time ago in this transmission. I've had this transmission for a good 8 years, if not more. Right off the bat, I see it has the O-ring style pump bolts that are 9/16 head. Usually a good sign. I don't believe this transmission has ever been touched. I pulled the torque converter out. I was going to the transfer station anyway, and I threw 6 torque converters into the iron bin. I got another parking brake to take off, but again, it looks more original than the other one did. So all we can do is rip into it and see what happens. It's a 1987. I can't quite read the tag. I think it's FLA potentially, so I'll let you know. My codes that I have a sheet of them, but they stop in 1981, I think. So 81 and up, I don't have all the codes for. I wish I did. This motorhome had 44,000 miles on it. I remember it like it was yesterday. And this one only has 2 studs for the parking brake cable bracket, and the rest are bolts, which is about 50-50 on the ones I've seen. So I like the ones with 6 studs, but it doesn't matter. Well, it was full of oil, burnt, but the pan, I wiped it out. There's hardly anything in there, which is good. I don't know when in the 80s they went to this silver coating that they're still using, but this pan is substantially heavier than your average tin pan that rusts on the inside as well. There's 2 silver coated ones in this pile. I noticed it the other day how much nicer they were. And by 87 anyway, they'd gone to washed bolts, the washers built in on all the pan bolts and the governor cover bolts, which is nice. You may have noticed, and I've been meaning to point this out, and I'll probably have to point it out in a different video where somebody could actually find information. I'm working on that, making everything organized, but you'll notice the stator tube is blue on the end. It's hardened. I don't know what year they started doing that, but definitely in the 80s. They started hardening the stator tube. They must have seen wear on the other ones, the ones that are silver, like this one, but I seldom find any wear on them. But I've mentioned this before, most of the transmissions in my area, the car was junk at 100,000 miles, so Most of these are relatively low mileage units, I assume. The rear parking brake came off pretty easy, but it wasn't without incident. As soon as I touched this bolt, which I had hit as best I could with the brake in the way and had already sprayed it only just before I started with penetrating oil, but the case is split right there. That'll be an easy fix, but it's a bummer. You can see the bolt was stuck, and as soon as I turned it, that force cracked the housing. I've seen it before, and I've fixed it before. But let's get on with it and bust it open and see what we have. Alright, I'm just kind of teasing myself at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and call my shot. This is a TH475, and here's why I think so. One, it had the big washer-headed bolts at a 9/16. The case is not 8 bolts, but has provisions for it. I just got to drill and tap 2 holes, and this could be an 8-bolt case. I'm looking at 6 clutches in the direct. That's a 475. I went ahead and took the forward out, which is beautiful, by the way, and it's dual fed. Every 475 I've ever taken apart, the forward is dual fed. They didn't do the direct. That's a modification that we do out in the outside world, but GM saw fit to do it to the forward. So I guarantee you this will have the straight cut planetary gears. But once again, there's only one way to find out. It does have the correct round drum. It only has a 16-element sprag, but that's okay. The poor manual second engine braking band is black. It's flaking off, and you can see where it was riding on the drum. Probably holding that motorhome back going down a mountain or something. It actually broke the apply piston. This is why you don't use plastic ones. Blew the center right out of it. Fortunately, we don't need any of that stuff. But when you're rebuilding the valve body, spend the $8 on an aluminum piston. And yes, it does have the straight cut gear set, which is what I was looking for. There's a very unique parking Pawl. There's 3 versions. This is the rarest. You don't see this one very often. Probably only in 475s, I'm not sure. I don't know why they chose to make it that wide. They just did. Some have double. Some have single. The old ones have a single row where the Pawl engages. Some have a space in between. Some are solid like this. But everything's in nice shape. Brass thrust washer in the back of the center support. Still a plastic one that I usually swap out for the for that one, which was in the bottom of the case because we're going to convert it to roller. So everything in the lower unit will have a metal thrust washer. Looking good. Along the lines of, did you know, the main shaft from 64 to 1970-ish, 71, was larger, and only the older hubs fit. If you buy a new billet hub, it won't fit. So you have to watch out for that. So if you buy a nice billet hub, which this isn't, this is a stock one, check your fit. Make sure your main shaft is correct. I believe the old ones are 100 thousandths bigger. Don't quote me on that, but I know they're substantially bigger. And that goes for all versions of the Turbo 400. So I have another big mess, a whole bunch of parts, but I at least have what I'm looking for. Whether I need it or not, I have a straight cut planetary gear set for the race TH475 I'm going to build. So to recap, I have an ATI bell housing. So whatever case I use, I'm going to have to whack the bell housing off it. I have an ATI forward drum and input shaft. I have a Sonex forward hub with a roller bearing. I'm not sure that's going to fit without machining. They say it might. Most of the time it does. We'll find out. I have my typical 4L80E drum with a 34 element sprag. 6 clutch on the forward, 6 clutch on the direct. I'm going to run my 4L80E pressure plate and 4 clutches and steels on the intermediate. And yes, you don't need all this stuff. I want all this stuff. I'm purposely doing it. It's not an accident. No need for debate. 5, 5, and 3 will get you way beyond the power that I have, but I want to put in more, because why not? Maybe someday I'll have more than that. Horsepower, that is. I have a Jags, allegedly made in the USA, main shaft. I have an ATI output shaft, which was the same price as used output shafts on eBay. I find that kind of funny. The dry shaft that I made for the 72 Nova has a strange hardened yoke made for a roller tail housing. So I'm currently shopping for one of those. I believe it would be okay on the bushing. The dimensions are within a few thousandths, but it is slightly bigger. It fits in my bushing. I've had it in the car with the bushing tail housing, but I'm currently shopping for one of those. It's the only thing I don't have. I've ordered the ATD billet aluminum valve body. Should be here any day now, so I technically don't have that, but I'm sure it'll be right along. I have to decide what case I'm going to run, and if I end up welding this case, I might as well use it for myself. I probably wouldn't sell it to anybody, so I might as well drill the extra pump bolts, whack the bell housing off it, weld up the back of it, and call it my own, because what else am I going to do with it? It's a good candidate for that, and I'll be keeping some of the transmission together. I have an Fti Aluminum Pan. I have mixed feelings about a stock pan compared to the aluminum pan, and I believe the aluminum pan adds some rigidity to the case, but if you ever smash it on the ground, it's probably going to do more damage to itself or other stuff than a tin pan that's just going to dent. So something to consider, but I'm going to plan on not smashing it on the ground. And I'll take the torsional rigidity of a heavier pan. So that's the plan. I'm still researching dump valves and converter charge pressure restrictors. So we'll see. We may play with that too, because again, it's going behind a turbo LS with a potentially more sensitive thrust bearing in the engine. So the more you can do to save it, maybe the better off you are. So that's it for today. Like, share, subscribe. Leave a comment. Ring the bell. All that YouTube algorithm stuff. And I'll catch you in a couple days. I don't know what we're doing next. Probably still working on this.